Hello, I'm Fiona Lowe and I'm an author. A Home Like Ours is, this is my book that is set in a country town up on the Murray River, and it's about a town in flux. It's changing. It's been a very sleepy township, and recently there's been quite a few people moving from Melbourne. And it's also a town that is part of the refugee resettlement program, so its demographics are changing, and they're very keen to encourage tourism. And so as a result of that, there's quite a bit of property values are rising, and there's land owned by the council down on the river, and the community garden just happens to be on the river. So when the book opens, there's a bit of chitter-chatter going on, there's a rising crime rate, and yeah, things are changing. This is a book that I wanted to explore the themes of displacement. And so I have 4 women, of which I've written in the point of view of 3. And so we have Helen, who's in her late 50s, and she's known homelessness. She lived in her car for 6 months, and but she arrived in Berlanga 3 years ago, and she's now the caretaker of the community garden, and she's very, very keen for no other women to experience homelessness like she has. And I'm not sure if your readers are aware, but currently in Australia the fastest rising demographic of homelessness is women over 55, so it's a major issue. So Helen's very committed to the community, and but she's also, because of what happened to her, she's not a very open person. She's helpful, but she doesn't want to let anyone get too close. So she keeps her distance. And then we have Tara. Tara is in her mid-30s, married. She and her husband have the hardware store in town, a well-respected business. But things in the marriage aren't going very well at the moment, and she feels that her husband's more interested in the crime wave with the store and the cricket club than her. So she's trying to reinvent the marriage, and things are not going so well. And I don't want to give away any spoilers there, but it's a relationship in crisis, but not for reasons that they fully understand at the start of the book. And then we have Jade. Jade's 19. She's a single mother. She's in town, and her boyfriend works away a lot. And Jade doesn't really fit in because the mothers groups, the toy library, all that, they're all very much geared to women like Tara in their 30s who are middle class, well educated, lots of disposable income. And she really struggles to fit in, and she feels the judgment of the town. And then there's Fiza. She's a Sudanese refugee who had to flee war and has come to Australia for a better life for her children. But she's discovering that there's far more challenges in settling in to live in Australia than she ever anticipated. And all these women end up at the community garden. They have nothing in common. They would never normally be friends, and they're certainly not friends at the start of the book. No, this is my 34th, but it's my 5th big single title novel that's about community and family. So I like to investigate and explore relationships, all sorts of different relationships, and take people to difficult places. Sometimes I rebuild relationships, sometimes I don't, but all my characters have experienced something that you may have experienced, or your next door neighbour, someone in your family. I write about contemporary issues that are affecting us. There's no pandemic in this book. Although, ironically, because I started this in 2019 and I wanted to explore displacement, I didn't realise that by the time I was writing the last third of the book and editing it, that we would all be very displaced by a pandemic. Looking back, did you wake up every morning and you were listening for the numbers? What are the numbers today? Da, 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 da. And so it was a bit more challenging to finish the book. I definitely edited it right through lockdown. I was more fortunate. I don't live in Melbourne, so I had a bit more freedom. But now, toward 12 months later, I'm looking back thinking, well, it has impacted me on ideas. I'm being asked to do a proposal for a next book. I've gone nowhere. I've seen no one. You get surrounded by ideas from being out in the world, as well as podcasts and reading newspapers and things. But yeah, I'm feeling a bit like the well's a bit drained. And I think it's because it hasn't been refilled in all those things, you know. I had a book launch the other night. I had to cap it. I'd never had so many people want to come to a book launch. It's because they've not been out for months. Why do I write? Goodness. I like to understand the world. I think I actually write to try and understand why people behave the way that they do. I'm a little bit of an overthinker, the family would say. I was always that person who, if a situation happened in a friendship group, I would want to explore, well, how did we get here and why did this happen? I am a full-time writer. Yeah, I am. Writing books this size, it takes about a year. You write the book. And I start toying with ideas and themes around about April, May, start doing research. I probably don't write anything until August. And in between that time, I've got edits coming in from the previous book that I've handed in. So it's quite disjointed for the first part of the process because you just start getting enthusiastic and getting into it, and then edits will hit, and then you move a bit, and then structurals come. So then I get a run on, and I normally am handing the book in at the end of April, which is always challenging this time of year. I'm chatting about a book and I'm frantically trying to finish a book. I do suffer from research procrastination. I always get to the point where, it's interesting, but really you've got to actually start it. And I fear that empty blank page. And I sit down every book, and it doesn't help to know that there's been 34 others. It doesn't help at all. You're still like, can I really do this? Is it really going to happen? And every book is different. There's a part of every book that will never work, and there's a part that sings, and it's never in the same spot. My favourite book last year, I really enjoyed Where the Crawdads Sing. I was taken into the bayous, and we used to live in the United States, so that was a lovely opportunity to revisit. And what I loved about it was it wasn't just lyrical prose. There was actually a really good story in there, and I love a story. I do read for story. I can remember the first book I ever borrowed from the school library, and that was Madeline. When I was in about grade 1, we'd been living in Papua New Guinea, so we didn't have a school library, and then we came back to Australia and I did Madeline. I do remember significant books of loving to read, and I think the first one was Anne of Green Gables, which was on the bookshelf at home, and there was nothing else to read, and I picked it up. And then the second defining moment at 15 was when my mother gave me a copy of Pride and Prejudice, which I went through the whole process of, this is the most boring book, why do I have to? She said, keep reading. And then I said, that horrible Mr. Darcy. She said, keep reading. I said, Mr. Darcy. And that is the first book I remember reading, and probably because I was 15 and you're just starting to be aware of boys and stuff, but I remember the sigh, the whole body sigh at the end, and feeling so good and desperately missing the characters. That was Pride and Prejudice, and I still love it. What's next for me? Well, I am frantically trying to finish a book that has 5 titles at the moment. Having trouble settling on the title. Normally, I knew A Home Like Ours. I knew that title, but this one is struggling. So it's due very soon. So I will be gluing my bottom to the chair and getting it finished, and hopefully back chatting to you about it next March. Well, thank you for having me.